And you can hear me okay, Mary?
Yep, I can.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Here.
How are you going to handle questions? That was just my only question.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have a question and answer box.
Okay.
And if anybody has any questions, they can put their questions in there. There's also a chat function, and I can monitor those.
Okay.
If
you want
people have
questions during the demo and
yeah, is that okay if people have questions during the demo? Okay.
Sure. As they come up, that works. Yeah.
Yeah, if I see them pop up, I'll monitor the chat and I'll monitor the Q&A box.
Okay.
And if anybody has any questions, I'll let you know that somebody's asked a question. Okay.
Sounds good.
Good. Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and introduce you here.
Yeah. I want to get all this area in there, make sure that we get all that in there.
Okay, well, welcome and thank you all for coming to our Skillet Suppers program presented by Mary Spencer. Mary Spencer has been a culinary instructor for over 20 years. She is the owner of Taste, a Cook's Place, LLC, a Northville, Michigan cooking school and Cook's Resource Center. She has also conducted numerous classes for corporations, including Ford Motor Company and Comerica, service organizations, and individuals. She has been a guest lecturer at the University of Michigan Sociology Department and Michigan State University. Her class repertoire includes over 3,000 class-tested cooking presentations, covering a wide range of topics. Her personal library holds over 5,400 cookbooks. Thank you for being here, Mary, and I'll let you go ahead and get started with Skillet Suppers.
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me. And so we're going to be doing two different recipes today. I'm going to start off with doing this is a recipe that we've been doing for a long time with my family, but we used to always boil the noodles separately and we didn't do it. This is an all-in-one kind of skillet supper. So you don't have to, boil your noodles, mix them in another bowl. It just makes things so much more convenient and easy. The second, so the first recipe is the Spanish noodles, and that's the one I was talking about. And it kind of has a little bit of a Spanish taste. It has some chili sauce. It has, just some ground beef, and we'll talk about things you can substitute and so forth. The second recipe that we're going to be doing is a Tuscan butter shrimp. And the reason I chose that, a few reasons. I'm using a cast iron skillet for that one because I know a lot of people maybe have cast iron at home and they don't know how to use it. They don't know how to season it, how to clean it and things like that. And plus the fact that I think a lot of times people are just perplexed as how to saute something like shrimp or seafood. So I thought this would be a good kind of way to kind of initiate people into doing that, as well as I can tell you different things that you can also substitute in that recipe as well. Very versatile. So the first one that we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the Spanish noodles. And I am using a pan that is not nonstick. This is a stainless steel skillet. And I like, if you're using skillets, if you're out in the market to buy one, to be honest with you, if you spend a little extra money on a skillet, you're going to have something that's going to last you a lifetime. So if you don't want to get something like a cast iron and you want to get just a nice non-stick skillet, you want to get one that maybe has some copper sandwiched in between, or even aluminum, because those are great conductors of heat. But if you do that, if you use the copper, a beautiful copper pan, they take a lot of care and a lot of time for you to be cleaning them and so forth. So the better thing to do is buy a nice stainless steel skillet with maybe some copper sandwiched in between 2 layers of stainless steel on the bottom. That way you've got great heat conductivity and a little less expensive than a pure copper pan or so on. The reason I'm using a stainless steel pan and not a nonstick pan is because I want the beautiful stuff that the bacon creates on the bottom of the pan. That's going to be flavor in my dish. So what I did earlier, because I think everybody has sauteed bacon, so I sauteed some bacon in my pan and I removed the bacon. I have some of the bacon fat in the pan, and then I have all those beautiful brown bits on the bottom. So whenever you're sauteing anything in a skillet like this, you want to make sure you get your pan hot, you add your oil to a hot pan, and then you add your food to the oil. Because a lot of times if you have problems with things sticking, It could be because you did not get your pan hot enough to begin with, and that's a real problem a lot of people have. So get your pan hot, get the oil, add the oil to a hot pan, oil, butter, whatever you're using, whatever fat you're using, and then you go ahead and you add your food to that, and then it won't stick. That holds true if you're doing it in a stainless steel pan or on the grill, however you want to do it. So I have some ground beef. I'm using ground beef for this recipe, and you can use pretty much anything you want. You can use some chorizo, which is that nice Spanish sausage, which is delicious, has a little spice to it. Or you could use chicken, ground turkey. You can eliminate the meat, and you can add maybe some cauliflower. We'll saute that, some asparagus or whatever if you want to make it vegetarian. So you can do a lot of different things, and you can kind of get away with just different flavors. Anytime you substitute something, the flavors are just going to be a little different. And that's kind of, it isn't going to be the exact same dish you started out to make, but, it's going to be pretty darn good too, as long as you use good quality ingredients and so forth. So now I am sauteing that beef. And as I'm sauteing that beef, I'm looking at the bottom of my skillet, and all that beautiful brown bacon pieces came up off the bottom of my skillet and are now in with the beef, which is going to be a tremendous amount of flavor. I have this on pretty high heat, and I'm cooking on a gas stove, so I can regulate it easily. You can leave this on medium high, and you'll get the same results. But I kind of like a lot of heat, so that's just the way that I've always cooked. So we've got a high heat on this, and I'm just getting my my beef sauteed so that it gets nice and brown. That's all I'm looking for at this point. Now, at this point, I'm using pretty lean ground beef. If you wanted to, you could strain or drain the fat from this. I'm not serving it to you guys, and this is going to be for my family. So we're just going to keep the bacon fat in here, and just because it eliminates one step for me right now. But if you wanted to, you could certainly, just drain the beef, and then maybe add just a little more olive oil in the pan, and then you should be good to go. All right, so my beef is getting nice and sauteed. At this point, I'm going to add 1 chopped onion. Okay, that goes in, and we're going to saute that with the beef. And I'm just kind of looking for that to get a little soft, because at this point, it's going to sweat. And what we talk about when we talk about vegetables sweating is basically they're getting soft and they're starting to exude some moisture. I'm not going to be looking to brown the onions, because with the beef in the pan, there's no room for those onions to kind of brown. Anytime you want to brown something, you want to do it in a layer in your pan so that things don't touch, and with very little moisture. And you'll see that when I'm doing the shrimp. It's a whole different kind of sauteing, okay? But also, I love this pan. This is one of my favorite pans. It has nice high sides. So anytime I'm doing something with liquid, this is a great pan for it. When I make risotto, in this pan, because it just, it holds a lot in here, and it just is a really nice pan. Everybody should own at least a 10-inch and at least a 12-inch skillet. If you are cooking for a bigger family and you need more, or you cook for a lot of friends or whatever, and you saute a lot of things like pieces of salmon or chicken, a nice 14-inch skillet is a nice way to go too. So if you can afford to, to splurge on something like that, that works as well. So my onions are sauteed, my beef is nice and sauteed. I'm going to add a chopped green pepper. I'm using green pepper because it kind of stays true to what the Spanish would do, and that's kind of what I'm looking for here. This isn't a really highly seasoned spicy dish, but it does have that kind of Mediterranean taste once you're done, and it is so easy, which really is nice. So many things that you can make in your skillet. You can make lasagna in your skillet, believe it or not. And that is a really nice little dish. You just, basically you do the same thing. And when we add our noodles to this, I would add lasagna noodles to the pan. I would add maybe some tomato sauce, some water, and then cover my skillet and let that cook. You basically finish it with cheese. you have a great little lasagna, not a constructed lasagna that you put in the oven, but a kind of a very, very deconstructed lasagna that is very casual and just really, really good. And spur of the moment, you don't have to plan a lot for something like that. So a lot of different things you can make in a skillet.
Mary, somebody asked if you can substitute red pepper in for green pepper. Would that work with the dish? Yeah.
Absolutely, no problem whatsoever. It's going to taste just a little different, but you know, red pepper is just, you know, just as good. It's a little sweeter, and I love it as well. Not a big fan of green pepper, to be honest with you, because it does have that bitterness. But with a dish like this, you know, it kind of works. So it's an okay vegetable to use. So at this point, I'm going to add my noodles, and I have some extra wide egg noodles here. All right, so we're going to add that to the pan. I'm just going to throw the whole bag in. All right, and we're just going to mix that together with the beef so that it all gets kind of mixed in. And then I'm going to add to this some oregano. I have a little bit of oregano, and I have, that's it, just oregano at this point. I typically like to season things like this at the very end, because one of the situations you fall into is that as you put a sauce in here, and as this starts to cook, or as this continues to cook, a lot of that liquid will reduce, and it will be absorbed by the noodles. So what ends up happening is that you end up reducing things, and if you seasoned pretty heavily before you add your liquid, you may have a kind of a salty dish. So I always like to season at the very end. To me, that just, you know, it just makes a little more sense, and I get much more of a just a more well-balanced finished dish. I'm going to add, this is one can of this is a big can of diced tomatoes, so I'm only going to add half of it. And I'm not a big person to use a lot of processed foods, you know, things that are in cans and such. But I do like tomatoes, because this time of year, you don't get really great tomatoes. And I am using the juice, okay, so that works. But, you know, if you're doing this at home and you have a 14.5-ounce jar of a can of tomatoes, that would work perfectly. I'm going to put in some water. So this is about 1.5 cups of water. Okay, and then we're going to just let that kind of nestle those noodles right in there. And then I have some chili sauce. So this is Heinz chili sauce. You find it just where you find the ketchup, and it has just a little more kick than a ketchup does. It has just a little bit more spice in it. Not talking about heat, but just a little bit more seasoning. So I'm going to add this, and you know, this is great even with fries. So if you have some of this and you don't use it all, you know, if you go ahead and just, you can use it, the rest of it on your fries. It would taste really good. Or you can make a sauce for your fries. It's called a Marie Rose sauce. Very classic French fry sauce that they use in England. A little bit of mayonnaise and a little bit of chili sauce mixed together. And it's phenomenal. Really delicious, guys. So if you want something just a little bit different, that works too. So now at this point, if you guys can kind of see this, I've got everything's in here. I've got enough water in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to put a lid on here. And in this case, I'm going to use a piece of aluminum foil. And I'm just going to cover this just with the aluminum foil. And then what I'm going to do is switch my burners so I can start working on our shrimp. All right, I'm just loosely covering it. Doesn't have to be, you know, doesn't have to be really perfect, okay? Just want to get it away from my fire. All right, so now I'm going to let that go on the other burner. We're going to turn that other burner on, and we're going to let that start cooking. And on this burner, I'm going to start using, I'm going to use my cast iron pan. And cast iron, one of the best pieces of equipment, because it's extremely inexpensive. So if you're looking for a pan, you know, that it's going to last you a lifetime. This thing is, it's a monster, and it will absolutely last you a lifetime. It's very inexpensive. Once you know how, it's very easy to take care of. And you know, it works for just about anything that you're going to cook. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with getting the pan hot. Like we talked about before, hot pan, cold oil. That's what you kind of have to remember. So I'm going to get the pan hot first. Then I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of butter to the pan, and that will start my. I'll be able to start sautéing the shrimp. You never want to add a protein to a pan when the pan is cold. If the pan is cold, you're going to have issues with food sticking, and that is just not a good thing. So I have my shrimp here, and we're going to start with the shrimp. And no matter what I do, this is kind of a dish with a pan sauce. So basically, I'm sautéing my protein, and then I'm going to take and make a pan sauce, which is a very, very easy way to to finish a dish. You could use chicken breasts with this dish. You could use fish. Salmon is delicious in this. So there's a lot of different things you could do. What I do after I peel my shrimp, because these have not been peeled, these have been deveined, so they have the slit up the front, but not peeled. I'm just going to peel these guys, which is real simple to do. And then what I'm going to do is always, when you're sautéing a protein, you never want to put a protein in the pan wet, okay? Because what happens is, as the protein sautés in the pan, you're going to end up with food that is steamed and not sautéed. The word sauté means to jump in the pan, means to jump. And what you're looking for is for the pan to get nice and hot so that your food actually starts kind of quivering in the pan. And if you've got liquid on your shrimp, it's going to start steaming. It's going to exude a lot of moisture, and you're going to end up with a little pool of water in your pan, which isn't always a good way to go. I'm going to add some olive oil to my pan.
And what's the size of the stainless steel skillet? Was it 12-inch?
I think this is a 10-inch. This is a
Okay.
10-inch. The other one is a 12-inch. The
Okay.
stainless one is a 12-inch. All right, I'm going to take some salt, and I'm just going to season my shrimp. So after I have peeled my shrimp, I always put them on a piece of paper towel, and then I put a piece of paper towel over the top, and I make sure that they get nice and dry. Okay, so right now these are nice and dry, and that's what I want. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of butter. We're going to add a little bit of butter to the pan as well. And you might ask me, why would I do that? Why would I take oil and butter? Because oil for heat, butter for flavor. Olive oil has some flavor to it, but typically if I want that buttery taste and I saute something solely in butter, it's going to start burning on me. But the butter is going to burn, and it's going to get nasty, and then you're going to end up with just a big, big mess. So if you put in a little oil and then add your butter, you're going to be able to saute for a little bit of a longer time, because things will not burn for you as quickly. All right. All right.
And someone had asked, can you use gluten-free noodles with that recipe, with the Spanish noodles?
What?
Can you use gluten-free?
You absolutely can.
That would work okay?
Yep. And, depending on how, you're used to gluten-free, how much liquid you want to put in there, you may have to put maybe just a little more liquid in, and, but that's not a big deal. So I'm going to, at this point, a minute, and you guys can see, this is an undone shrimp. If I pick this up, this is not done, and on the other side, nice and pink. And that's how you want it to be. So within a minute, you're going to flip these shrimp over, and you're going to continue cooking them on the other side for just another minute. All right. And again, I don't know if you guys can see this real well, but I'm not crowding this pan. All right. So that pan it doesn't have, every inch covered by shrimp. It is very, very, very loosely covered, because I don't want things to stick. If protein sits next to, if chicken breasts sit next to each other, there's no place for that moisture in the chicken breast to go, and it's going to start pulling in your pan. Then you're going to have an awful time with it. All right, so again, you have to do this in batches. It just takes a few minutes, not a big deal. And always season as you go, guys. Always season. So you might make sure that you always season your shrimp. Don't season the shrimp too soon before you start cooking them, because as the salt sits on the shrimp, it's going to start making them a little bit tough. So be careful with that. All right, I'm going to stir my Spanish noodles. I don't know if you guys can see that. And they're starting to get nice and soft. All right, so there's almost partway there, guys. Partway there. Real easy dish to make. And the reason I'm keeping the aluminum foil or the cover on the pan is just because I don't want it to overcook. All right, and it keeps a little bit of that moisture in the pan instead of losing that. All right.
And someone was curious what the white tool that you use to chop your beef with. What was
yeah, I love that gadget, guys. And honestly, I don't know where I got it from. Somebody told me that Pampered Chef is selling these, but it's just it's a meat masher in your pan. So it's made out of silicone, and it just mashes your meat so that you don't you don't have to play with your wooden spoon or whatever. It works like a charm. If you don't have one of these gadgets, a potato masher works real well too. So you can use a potato masher to mash your meat as well, and that works. So it's just a little four-sided little gadget, but I love this thing. I'm always afraid I'm going to lose it somehow, because I just, it's one of those things that kind of takes a little bit of that extra work away from you. Kathy, can you tilt the screen just a little bit so I can? My last batch of shrimp, guys. Now, you can do this with scallops. You can do this with like the shrimp, scallops, salmon, chicken. You could even do it with pork. Sauteed medallions of pork tenderloin. Get it nice and seared on both sides. And then, so thinner slices. That takes you just a few minutes, and that'll work out really well as well. All right, so I'm going to flip these. But anytime you're going to make a pan sauce with something, you always want to make sure that you saute your protein first. Just like I sauteed the bacon in that stainless steel pan, I sauteed the shrimp in this pan because I get the little bits that come off of the shrimp meat, and they get stuck to the pan. So when I start making that sauce, it's going to be absolutely delicious. So when a shrimp is done, you should never have an O. You should always have a C. All right, so the shrimp ends should never meet. It should always be just a little, like the letter C. So if you remember that, guys, you're doing okay. So letter C, all right? If you overcook them, sometimes they turn out to be like, rubber balls, and it's just not a fun thing. And never, ever, ever use cooked shrimp to make a shrimp dish. If you're going to be cooking shrimp, always use raw shrimp. Never use cooked, okay?
Where do you usually get your shrimp from?
I get my shrimp, I love them from Costco. And I always buy frozen, always, because shrimp here in Michigan never comes fresh, or very rarely comes fresh. Typically, most of your shrimp that you're going to buy is going to be frozen. So you're going to always make sure that if you want the best quality shrimp, buy them frozen. Even if you see shrimp that are thawed in the fish case at the grocery store, I don't buy those. I buy the frozen ones, because what they do is they take out those shrimp in the morning, they thaw them, and if they don't sell all of them, they're going to put them for the next day, and you as an unsuspecting person are going to buy day-old shrimp that have been sitting there thawed for a day. If you are making something with shrimp and you have frozen shrimp and you didn't have time to thaw them, the best thing, I turn the heat off on this, by the way, so that as I'm talking, I don't start burning my butter. But the best thing for you to do is to buy your shrimp as they're frozen. If you're going to use them right away, take a bowl, pour your frozen shrimp into a bowl, fill the bowl to cover the shrimp with cold water. Change the water about every 5 minutes. Just drain it off, fill it with cold water again. In 15 minutes, you'll have thawed shrimp. Simple. simple, guys, and you're just going to have a better product to begin with. So now my Spanish noodles are pretty much done. They're nice and soft. I can kind of feel them with my spatula. And this is the fun part. I get to taste. I want a little bit of salt and pepper. All right, and we're gonna just stir that in. This is the time to do your seasoning. Because, you know, this way, if you put way too much salt in the beginning, it's gonna be just, your finished dish is gonna be way too salty. Then the one thing I always forget is the bacon. The bacon that I sauteed beforehand, we're gonna put it in now. That way, it doesn't get super soft as you're cooking your dish, and this just makes it really, really yummy, guys. So this is our Spanish noodles. So I want to show you what it looks like in a bowl. All right, so I've got it's just so good. And what was that, like 15 minutes from start to finish? So there's our Spanish noodles, guys, real simple. A salad with that, and you have a beautiful meal. So really, really easy, okay? So I'm gonna put this off to the side. I'm gonna give it to my daughter's fiance, and he's gonna eat it, probably. So, you know, we've been doing a lot of these Zoom demos. The only problem with Zoom demos, guys, is I can't give you the food, and I wish you could taste it. Someday that'll be a thing again. But so now I have my pan with my butter, and I had sauteed the shrimp in. So we're gonna turn the heat back on. All right, and then we're going to add to that a little bit of garlic. All right, so I have some chopped garlic here. And I never buy my garlic pre-chopped. I always buy it and then I chop it myself. I buy it peeled and then I chop it myself. I'm gonna put in some cherry tomatoes. These are just halved, beautiful little heirloom cherry tomatoes that I have. All right, so we're gonna saute that. And we're gonna let that kind of just sit for a minute. Back to the garlic. You know, to be honest with you, I have never bought that garlic in a jar that has been pre-minced, because garlic, once you buy it and once you cut it, like if I chopped all this today, I chop it in a little mini food processor because I'll be cooking for the next couple days. And as you know, as it sits in the fridge, it's going to start getting stronger and stronger and stronger. The problem with garlic is once you've chopped it, you break the cells of the garlic and it gets super strong if you let it sit. So after about 3 days, if I don't use this, it gets tossed. But I pretty much always use it. But you know, it's just one of those things that I make sure that I, you know, always have fresh garlic. All right, and I love these little cherry tomatoes just because they look so beautiful. And I have this now on kind of a medium heat. And what's happening now is that these tomatoes are kind of making a little bit of a sauce. All right, so if I take a spoon, I can kind of show you that sauce. And it'll keep creating that beautiful little sauce as we cook it, right? Which is really, really delicious. All right, so I'm gonna let that continue to cook. I really believe that, you know, having really fresh ingredients, you don't have to spend a fortune on ingredients. You just have to make sure that what you're buying is pretty fresh. And, you know, that's why I don't buy the pre-chopped garlic, because to me, it's been sitting there by the time it gets to the store, it's probably been in that jar for about a week and a half or 2 weeks. And to me, it's way past its prime. So, you know, I just feel that, you know, the fresher something is, the better. So there's my beautiful sauce. You guys can kind of see how that's coating my spoon. I can kind of make a line through it, which is great, okay? And at this point, I'm gonna add some spinach to this. So fresh spinach, baby spinach. And we're just gonna let this kind of wilt down. So, you know, the nice thing about a cast iron pan, you know, it holds heat really well. That is the nice thing about a cast iron pan. If you have one and you are taking it somewhere and you make a dish and you want it to sit and stay warm, it's going to stay warm for a while because cast iron really holds heat well. The way that I clean cast iron, and honestly, guys, if you look at this and you see, if you saw the bottom of this pan that I made the Spanish noodles in, you're going to think to yourself, oh man, you know, after I sauteed that bacon, you're going to have to scrub that pan until your fingers bleed. That's not the case, because as I'm cooking that dish and I put my food in there that has liquid, that liquid deglazes the bottom of my pan, okay, which makes it absolutely a breeze to clean after at that point. If you look at the bottom of this pan, there's nothing on the bottom of the pan. So once I take the food out, you know, that pan is pretty simple to clean. And the same holds true with cast iron. So right now, all that stuff that was on the bottom of that pan is now in my sauce, which is exactly what I want it to do. And if you have something stuck on the bottom of one of these pans after you've cooked it, and maybe something burned or something to that effect, then what I would do is just take that pan after you've removed the food, take the, fill it with about, I would say, 1/2 inch of water, put it on your stove top, and I would do that with cast iron as well as with a stainless pan, and I would bring it to a boil, let it boil for about 2 to 3 minutes. Once it boils, I take a wooden spoon and just scrape it, and that stuff will come right off. You don't need cleaners, you don't need anything. That works beautifully. With a cast iron pan, the way that you would clean this is the way you would clean any other pan. I've been using cast iron for over 30 years, and I have probably 25 cast iron pieces that I use. I have always used soap and water on my cast iron when I clean it. You have food debris in there. You don't want to just throw, you know, rub it. Some people say just rub it and then, you know, dry it or, you know, wipe it out or whatever. No, it's got food in there. You really want to make sure you clean it. Once I clean it, I take it off of the, you know, off of the sink and put it dry. I put it when it's still wet on my burner, just like I'm doing right here. And I let that pan, put it on high heat and let that pan get nice and dry. You'll see all the moisture evaporate from the pan, and that way your pan will not rust. So that works beautifully. A little bit of heavy cream. If you don't want to use heavy cream, you could do 1/2 and 1/2. You can even do milk. It will work. Won't be quite as rich as the heavy cream, but it will work. All right, so this gets put in here. And I have some beautiful Parmesan cheese, grated Parm. That's going in as well. I'm going to put all of my shrimp back. All right, so we're going to toss that all together. Oh my God, guys. I wish you could taste this. I really do, but you got to make it, because that, honestly, that's the point. Adding some salt, adding some pepper. All right, and now we're going to taste it. Always want to make sure you taste it.
Mary, would you mind scooting the camera down just a little bit? Someone had said they couldn't see what was in the pans.
You see it
Great.
now, Rose?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
You.
Okay, so there is our dish. And I tasted it. It tastes perfect to me, maybe just a tiny bit more salt. I'm going to turn the heat off of this. And what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of fresh basil to this, which I love to do. And then I also love to add a little bit of acidity. So I have just a lemon, okay? And I'm going to cut that in half. Acid is really important in cooking, all right? So, you know, actually, if you are somebody that doesn't want to use a lot of salt, if you use an acid such as lemon juice or you know, you can use vinegar, even some of these balsamic vinegars that are flavored and they taste beautifully. You can use those, and just a little bit at the end will give your food brightness, all right, which is really kind of what salt does too. But, you know, it's also going to add just a little bit of flavor, which is really nice. I have some beautiful basil here. I don't know if you guys can see. I'm gonna pick off the leaves, and we're gonna just pile them one on top of the other. And I'm just gonna kind of slice them just like this. And we're gonna add that right at the very end, okay? And that's my beautiful Tuscan shrimp. Now, you can serve this over rice. You can serve this with noodles. You can serve this, you can do polenta, which would be delicious. If anybody likes to make polenta, that would be a really nice way to finish this dish. And I have another bowl here, and we'll just show you guys what that looks like so you can kind of get more of a picture. All right. So if I was going to do this with chicken or with fish, I would do the exact same thing. Saute it before. Can you see it? Yeah, you have to tilt the thing down. There you go. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Now there is my Tuscan butter shrimp. And so if I did chicken, I would do the exact same thing. I would do chicken breast because they cook very quickly. You could do salmon, you could do cod, you could do really any nice firm kind of fish. And I would do the exact same thing I did with the shrimp. So basically saute them. Don't crowd your pan, because if you crowd your pan, you're going to have your food sweat and it's going to steam and not saute, okay? And then remove it from the pan, build your sauce just like I did. And then once the sauce has been built and it's all done, you put your protein back into your sauce to kind of reheat it. And maybe even for chicken, if you don't cook it all the way through when you sear it to get it nice and brown, you know, put it back in your sauce and it will continue to cook it too. So, you know, you'll be assured that you're going to have it cooked all the way through. Okay?
Someone had asked if you use salmon. Did you say the salmon should be cut into small pieces and then you saute the pieces for about a minute on each side? Is that what you'd said about salmon?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. So salmon, I would cut it into fillet pieces, you know, maybe 4-ounce pieces, 4 to 5 ounce pieces. You know, just take a look at it and see how big of a piece you want for your family or whatever. And then, you know, sear it again. Make sure you get your pan nice and hot, your oil nice and hot first, then add your protein to your pan so that it does not stick. If you're having problems with food sticking to your pan, that typically is the primary reason, is because you did not get your pan hot first. If I start something in a cold pan, it's gonna stick like glue. What you're doing when you put food in a hot pan is you're allowing that pan to almost develop a nonstick surface, even though it is not a nonstick pan. So you're allowing it to develop a nonstick surface, and that food kind of almost hovers above the pan. It doesn't stick to the pan. The other thing is, if you've added chicken breasts or fish to your skillet and you start sauteing it in the hot oil and you start to go to move it, okay, you start to go to push it to move it, you see that it's starting to stick a little bit, leave it alone. That is one of the biggest problems I have with men. I'm sorry, you guys out there, but it's the truth. Men in barbecues, when they start grilling, I have to laugh all the time. They get their grill hot, they put their food on the grill, and they immediately start moving it. They take the tongs and they start flipping the steak or the chicken, and they start moving it around, and they don't allow that meat to kind of develop a nice surface on it, nice browning on it. And then it naturally releases from your pan or from your grill. So it holds true on both ends. If you're going to be sauteing it, if you're going to be grilling your food, get it hot first, add your food, and let that food sit for a second. Don't try to move it immediately, because if you try to move it immediately, you're going to end up with like strings of chicken breasts stuck to the pan. Let it sear, let it get nice, and let it get that little crustiness on the bottom. Then you can move it. Then you can turn it, you can flip it, or whatever you need to do with it, okay? Any other questions?
Yeah, there's a few questions here. Someone said, what would cause noodles to get too mushy in a Spanish noodle recipe? I'm not sure if you answered that yet.
Overcooking.
Just overcooking?
Overcooking, yeah, or you've added too much liquid. You know, the funny thing with noodles or rice is the fact that they love moisture. And if you've given it too much liquid, If I put in there 3 cups of liquid for some reason, maybe I put in too much of the tomato. That's why when you're doing a recipe like this, kind of adhere to what the recipe is telling you as far as the liquid, because that's almost a little more scientific than just throwing in a little bit of this and a little bit of that. If you've ever made a chicken noodle soup or a minestrone, okay, and then you put your noodles in at the end, you let your noodles cook in the soup, and then, you know, you eat the soup, you put it away for the evening. The next day, you take it out for lunch and you scoop some of that soup, and you have no broth left, because the noodles are going to keep absorbing any liquid you give it. If you put it in a big pot of liquid, you're going to end up with a pot of noodles, you know. So even when I do something like making chicken noodle soup, I learned from my mother. She made the best homemade chicken noodle soup, and she would always make her noodles and put them in the bowl. She would boil the noodles, put the noodles in a bowl, and then pour the hot broth over the noodles, and it would heat the noodles. And that way you're assured that they're not going to get overcooked. So the reason that they would get mushy would be because you've added too much liquid to it. And if they keep absorbing that liquid, there's just no more room for it to go, and it's just going to get like slimy and nasty.
Okay. Someone had asked, are you seasoning with salt and pepper? What other seasonings did you use?
I just used a little oregano. I'm pretty much, for the Tuscan shrimp, I just use salt and pepper, I think. I don't think I used anything else. No.
Was it kosher salt?
And it's always kosher salt, guys.
Okay.
And you know, I do have a lot of sea salt. I use sea salt sometimes for cooking, like what I'm doing here, or for, you know, when I salt pasta water, or and I do it for baking as well. I use kosher salt. All salt is pretty much the same. Okay, salt is salt. It just depends on how they harvest it. So when they harvest it from water, which is what sea salt is, it's a lot more expensive, because it's a lot more of an expensive process to do. Kosher salt comes from land, and it's almost, I mean, salt is salt. All salt is the same. So it's pretty basically the same. And what I love to do is I love to put it in my fingers, because I can feel it. If I'm shaking it in a salt shaker, I don't know how much salt I put in there. If I put it with my fingers, I can stop. I can put in exactly how much I think that dish needs, and then I stop. So that's why I use kosher salt. And I've been cooking with kosher salt for probably as long as I've been cooking. But for other things, like if I'm going to season something at the very end, I'll use sea salt. I will use, those beautiful fancy finishing salts that are like $10 for a little jar. Those are great for exactly what they're intended for, finishing. So if I take this Tuscan shrimp and I have a little bit of Dover sea salt, oh my God, it's so delicious. It's like, it's not that it tastes different, it's the texture. It's like snowflakes. So when you put it on your food, that kind of, that grain stays intact, and when you eat it, you can almost feel it melting on your tongue. So that's what the finishing salts are for. They're actually for finishing a dish, not necessarily. If I took that $10 bottle of salt, and then they give you a little container. If I took that and I put it in my pasta water, or I put it in my Spanish noodles, it would dissolve. You wouldn't know what I used. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't know if I'm using a $10 bottle of salt or if I'm using kosher salt. So finishing salts are for finishing. Kosher salt and sea salt. You can use sea salt. I mean, it's a great salt. Those are for cooking, okay? Because they're a little less expensive, and, it's the same thing.
Okay. Right? Somebody asked about the shrimp being cooked. You said the letter O means overcooked?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that for
them to be perfect, you don't want those two ends to come together. Okay. You want it to say a letter C. If it comes together and then they start going like this, and they start ending up into a little rubber ball, you might as well just use them as a little rubber ball, because they are not palatable. You can't, they're chewy, they're nasty. Shrimp is a muscle. So as it cooks, that muscle is tightening. That's why that shrimp starts to actually, close up like that. If you do it way too much, then you're making it so that muscle is, so tough that you barely can eat it. Shrimp should be quick, very quickly sauteed. Never, like, even if I'm doing Like I just did a jambalaya last week, and you do a gumbo or something to that effect where it's a long, slow cooked dish. Even then, I don't add the shrimp till the very end because shrimp takes 10 minutes at the tops to cook.
Okay. Somebody asked, instead of cream, can you use white wine or fish broth?
I wouldn't use, there really isn't a reason to use fish broth. You could use white wine. Um, you, the reason you're adding the cream is because you want it to be creamy. Okay, that's the finish of the sauce. If you're looking to eliminate some of that calorie, you can use some yogurt, some plain yogurt, like Greek yogurt or something, and just add a spoonful of that. You'll get that creaminess without all the calories as well. You can just add white wine. It'll be a little bit of a different taste. So, but you can absolutely do that. So when you add your garlic, and then you add, I think, what did I add? I added the garlic, and then I added the tomatoes, and then I added the spinach. Then I would take and I would add maybe a 1/4 cup of white wine. Always make sure that you let that wine completely evaporate because you don't want the alcohol in there. And some people say, oh, yes, we do. No, you don't. You don't want the alcohol. You want the flavor of the wine, but not so that it tastes like a glass of wine. So you get that nuance. And that'll be a beautiful dish as well because the tomatoes are going to make a broth, and so is that wine. So you'll have a beautiful dish, without cream.
Can you use almond milk if you have a dairy intolerance? Would you say?
I think it would be really delicious in this, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that would be a really good way to go. I've never sauteed with it, so I've never put it over intense heat. I don't know how it behaves. I don't know if it curdles. So you might want to put it in the first time you use it and turn your heat down so that it's not boiling and bubbling furiously. You don't want it to split or something to that effect. If you lower the heat, add it to that and mix it in and take it right off the heat, until you know how it behaves when you add it to something hot. Okay,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
What can you substitute for chili sauce, or can you make your own?
You could just take a little chili powder and you could add it to ketchup. That's going to be a little paprika. I would add a little paprika to it because Spanish cuisine is heavy on paprika. Or just take ketchup, add a little ketchup to it, add some paprika to it, maybe a little more garlic powder. Maybe you could even add a little bit of, thyme from a bottle. You could put in maybe a little bit more dried basil too in there, just to kind of give it more flavor, because that's what's going to give it a lot of flavor. So if you don't want to use the chili sauce, just use ketchup, or tomato paste will work. As well. You can use a little bit of tomato paste and then add a few, paprika would be a big one in the Spanish noodles because that's a big spice to use in Spanish in Spanish cooking.
Makes sense. Somebody said that they had used evaporated milk and it was really good.
Oh, that would be a perfect thing. Yeah, if you don't mind the, using the evaporated milk, that is, my mother used to use evaporated milk for a lot of things, and it has that kind of creaminess that, and that real nice, like kind of milky taste that I think it would go delicious in this. So if you don't want to use the heavy cream, like I said, you don't have to use heavy cream. You can do half and half. You can do milk. You can do the yogurt. You can do, really, honestly, some people put sour cream in it. Whatever you want to do, guys, and that's just to kind of give it that creaminess. Evaporated milk would be awesome.
Okay. And does anybody else have any other questions? Feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. Everybody's saying it looks really good, Mary. I agree, it looks delicious.
Good. I'm glad.
They learned a lot and they really appreciate it.
Good. Yeah, these are easy dishes, guys. These are, these aren't dishes that you're gonna slave over for hours. So, and that's kind of what I like to do with skillet suppers. It's, it's fast, it's simple, but it tastes really, really good. Mm-hmm. So that's the essence of it.
And there have been some questions about if this was recorded. I did record this, and it will go on the library's YouTube page, and I'll send a link to everybody who is registered. And the recipes were attached to the Zoom invite for the program, but I'll also, I linked the recipes in the chat, but I'll also email everybody the recipes again after the program so that you have them. See if there's any more.
And tomorrow morning, I will be on WDIV Live in the D doing an Instant Pot chili demo. So for you who are who watch that show or who can want to catch it, and I did submit the recipes there, so I think you can download it off their website as well. I'm doing a sweet potato black bean chili and a turkey chili that is just to die for. So 2 different chili dishes. So.
Well, great. Can you tell us a little bit about a cook's place?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, you know, it's a cooking school that I started a long time ago that is for home cooks. So people who want to learn new recipes, new ideas. I always get calls from people, are you a culinary school? You know, I'm not a place where you come to learn how to be a chef. Although, you know, if you cook a lot of food, I consider you a chef because you make up things, you know, you're a chef in your own home. And that's kind of what we do at Taste. Although I have not taught a class in person since last March, and I've been teaching for over 20 years, so it's been quite a withdrawal for me. I have been making bi-weekly meals, 5-course meals that I deliver to people. So it's a 5-course meal. You can order it on my website, and it's all cooked, reheatable, and you know, this week, tomorrow, or Thursday, we're doing chicken Kiev, and it's just, you know, real nice meals for 2 or 4 people. And people tell me they have enough for 2 or 3 meals. So that's what I've been doing to kind of sustain myself through this. Mm-hmm. And hopefully in the future, my cooking classes will come back. We'll hope. We hope, guys. We hope.
Okay. Well, great. As someone mentioned, we should possibly do a dessert webinar at some point.
Oh, yeah.
On-pie pumpkin cheesecake.
Oh, we have lots of
ideas. Oh, what time is the show you're on tomorrow morning?
They said I'll be on at 10:15 in the morning, around that time.
Okay, on WDIV?
Yeah, Channel 4, Live in the D. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. And someone asked what your website is for a cook's place.
It's tasteacooksplace.net. All one word, tasteacooksplace.net.
Okay.
And you can go on there, and right now I have my meals listed. I don't have, you know, and then I have, like, I had the Waterford Library demo. So whatever demos I have coming up in the future, I have those listed as well.
Okay. And I'll include that in the email that I send around to everybody with the recipes and the recording as well.
Thanks, Liz.
But yeah, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. So, but thank you so much, Mary. That was great. Everybody's saying thank you and that they learned a lot and that they really loved the demo. So
great. Thank you, guys. I'm happy. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for letting me into your homes.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Mary. I'll go ahead and end the webinar now, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Everyone for coming.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye, Mary. Thank you.
Bye.